Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the Dark Art Society podcast. I'm your host Chet, and this week I have an interview with Mike Gamble, who's an artist, painter, printmaker, and he's got a tool poster out from this tour. Really cool painting of his, and he got in touch with me and thought it'd be a good idea to have him on, and we ended up having a really great conversation. Super cool guy, very talented, lots of technical talk about printing and stuff, and all kinds of good stuff. Yeah, really enjoyed this one. I don't know if you can tell, but I'm completely exhausted. Once again, nothing ever changes, I suppose. I had the craziest week. Oh my God. I had to try and get a bunch of money together to pay my taxes because my extension ran out. And so I was just cranking out studies through my Patreon, asking people if they wanted to commission some studies from like horror movies and stuff. And I was just hustling and painting, pulling all-nighters. And yeah, it was just very busy, very productive. Got a bunch of painting in, which was cool, but man, I was really it was crazy. Just kind of went by in a big whirlwind. So now I was able to pay a large chunk of it, but I still have to do payments. I am doing a payment plan thing, but I got, a lot of it paid. So thank you everybody on my Patreon who supported me and helped out. I know a lot of people were like commissioning studies because they wanted to study, but they also wanted to help out. And I really appreciate that. I have the best fans in the world. In fact, Kyle from Skull Shop, who's our sponsor, I might as well say that now since I brought up the subject of fans or collectors or whatever you want to call them. He texted me this weekend. It's from Son of Monsterpalooza, and he said, Kevin, a Patreon supporter, says hello from Monsterpalooza. And I said, hello, Kevin. And he said, you really do have the nicest fans. And I was like, it's true. They're the coolest people. They're amazing. You guys and girls and everyone are amazing, and I appreciate it. So, if you want to, let's see, where do I go from here? I'm kind of screwed up now. I am so out of it. I was good for the interview though, so I was definitely better in better form. And see, it's the end of the evening of the day I did the interview, so I'm kind of burnt. It's all hitting me at once. If you want to support the Dark Art Society podcast, you can go to patreon.com/darkartsociety and join for as little as $1. And that is what allows me to keep doing this podcast. Kyle from Skull Shop, as you know his skulls. It's so funny. These are always in me going like this on the desktop version of YouTube. Almost all of the episodes, if you hover over with your cursor, they're me holding a skull up. It's so weird. Just because it automatically does it. Anyway, SKULLSHOPPE.com. If you join at the $5 and above level on Patreon, you get a discount, 20% off code for any of his human skull replicas on the Skull Shop. And if you want to support my work, my personal Patreon is patreon.com/ChetZar. That's where my focus is really, aside from doing my commission work and stuff. I'm not on social media as much as I used to be. Now it's all on my Patreon. So I'm posting all the stuff I did during the week. I posted pictures. I did some Jack Nicholson from The Shining studies, and you see a Crimson Ghost back here. I put all my time lapses and everything. Everything's on there. So that's really the best place to find me, is on my Patreon, patreon.com/ChetZar. And you could join that for only $1. $12 a year. It's really pocket change, you know? What else? I guess that's it. Oh, if you join the Dark Art Society podcast, see, it's a mess. It's a mess. But somehow everyone keeps listening, so I keep doing it. If you join the Dark Art Society podcast Patreon, you also get your name read on the air, or on the podcast. On the air is not really applicable anymore. Okay, so new subscribers this week are Todd Zerwell and Sidekick Cato. Thank you both very much for supporting the podcast. It's greatly appreciated, because I do enjoy doing the podcast, and but I couldn't do it if it wasn't being paid for. So because I just can't afford to, because I'm always hustling. I guess that's it. I feel like I'm forgetting something. Anyway, who cares? Here we go with a really cool interview with a really cool artist, Mike Gamble. Hope you enjoy it. Here we go. Okay, we're finally starting. What's up, Mike?
How's it going, man?
Oh, you know how it's been going. It's been crazy. For those of you listening, I was just running around all morning dealing with taxes and stuff, and Mike's like, "Oh yeah, I understand. Totally understand. Mm-hmm. This is the art life."
Yes, it is. Unfortunately. Fortunately, unfortunately.
Yeah, right. So you got in touch with me. I have been aware of your work before, and then I saw that you did a Tool poster, and I was like, I know that guy's work. That was recent, right?
Yeah, it was, I think, like 2 weeks ago, something like that. Kind of out of the blue.
So I don't know if you can say how that happened or not.
Oh yeah, so I talked briefly about it on that other was it Spiral Out podcast.
Oh, okay.
But I'll tell the whole thing again.
Yeah,
I'm so fresh that it's wild, you know.
Yeah, I'm totally curious about that.
So let's go back to, I think it was like 2019 when Tool was doing their tour, and the artist that ended up being I'm from Philly, so the artist that ended up being the Philly poster was Carly Schmidt, and it was just totally random. It was on Reddit. I saw this gorgeous drawing. It was a pencil drawing. Messaged her on Reddit, found her Instagram. We're just kind of like shooting the shit back and forth. And then finally she was like, "Hey, I'm really not supposed to tell anybody. Don't tell anybody, but I'm doing the Philly show." And I was like, "Oh, sweet." You know, Love the piece. I was just stoked to get in. So it spurred the idea. I was like, I paint, I do some artwork. So I decided to do the same thing she did. You know, I did some, I don't know how she even got in. I think it was kind of the similar thing, just kind of putting it online and seeing what happens. So anyway, I did a piece, did a very quick drawing, like in like a month, wasn't even finished, you know, slapped together some edit on it, you know, Photoshop just to get it done and throw it out there. And it was pretty immediate. I think it was like in 24 hours, Adam, you know, I tagged him in it, tagged Tool's official Instagram page. He just reached out and said, you know, poster art for the tour. I'm like, yes, please. Okay. And then COVID happens. So like it went from that to just radio silence.
Oh, right.
For like a year. And now I'm like, you know, obviously it's like such a cool opportunity. It's a huge gig. And then it's rug pulled. And I'm sure they're dealing with their own shit from their end. So it was just like this kind of back. And then like I want to say, maybe like a year and change later, he actually reached out again, and like it was super nice. Obviously, I'm just some random dude on the internet, you know?
Right? Yeah.
So he reached out again and just said, "Hey, man, I'm like really sorry. Obviously, COVID happened. Tour got canceled. Now we have like this backlog of artists. So like I'm keeping you in mind. Like just be patient." So I was like, "Sweet,
that's cool.
Whatever." Yeah, exactly. He didn't even need to reach out, but it was nice to at least know he's still thinking about it. Blah blah blah. So then another. This was, like I said, 2019, so it was like years and years go on. And I just kept continuing to do these pieces that were inspired by like each track from their last album. It was like, when I was like 13, I was like so into them. And then obviously like the big lulls between their albums. That last album came out, kind of like re-fired me up with, you know, just being into their music. So I did a piece for each song. And then this one of the last ones, again, finally he reached out just really randomly like a month ago. Same thing, poster art, for fall. Sure, sweet. So then I talked to the management, blah blah blah. They had, while I was on the phone with them, he's, I see you're from Philly. I'm like, yeah. And then he says, oh, they're doing a Philly show. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to the Philly show. And he says, well, it's not my, forte, but he's like, I'm going to put a note that you'll get the Philly show. So I'm like, dude, it's going to be the day after my birthday. I'm like, you're making this too perfect. So that was just in my mind frame. Well, then it ends up being the first show. So it's like this avalanche. Like I wasn't even expecting it. I had like a month to plan. I'm gonna do like a booklet, hand bound booklet for I just had all these ideas.
Yeah.
Fuming I was gonna do for a month, and then all of a sudden my phone starts blowing up on like the 4th, and I'm like, all these Tool fans are starting to follow my page, and then like a barrage of hundreds of people. Hey, I just people are rumbling that you have the Tool poster for show 1. Is this true? And I'm like, oh, I don't know. You tell me. I got no clue. It's been wild.
Wow.
It's been a weird, wild whirlwind. I am happier than a pig and shit right now.
That's amazing. Yeah. Poor Adam. Poor Adam's gonna hear this. He's gonna be getting hit up by so many people.
Yeah. I know. How about it?
Yeah, I'm sure he already gets hit up all the time.
That's
sure.
what I was saying to that guy Chris. It was like, I'm sure I'm one of thousands of people doing the same thing.
I try not to bug him, and we're friends. It's like I try not to bug him because I know he's always getting hit up.
I'm sure. I'm sure.
That's just how it is. I guess when you get to that level of fame, it's got to be crazy. But that's amazing. So yeah. So how about I'm interested in your because I was checking your work out. You do so much like printmaking, woodcuts.
Yeah,
it's like talk about rare type of printing. Even printing is rare enough, especially in this niche kind of weird art scene we're in.
For sure.
And then woodcut is like another level of niche.
It's even more, right?
But it's kind of cool because it's like I saw like etchings and things like that I've seen people do. I'm like, this looks like you need all kinds of special equipment and special plates and stuff. And then with woodcut, it's like, oh, I see what he's doing there. It's like, if you have the press,
right,
you could,
and even then, just a spoon,
right. So I want to get to actually, I want to get into all that, but first we should give people like a background, your history. Okay. Let's see, you were into Tool when you were 13, so that would put you at like, let me see, how old are you?
30. I'm about to be 35 this year.
Okay, so that's what I was thinking.
That was like in the 2006 range, 13, 15,
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So I see. Okay. Making me feel old again. It's like 13, you were into Tool. I'm like, yeah, I was probably working on something for them back then.
How about it?
But it's all good. I'm just kidding. But most people on the show are younger than me. I always say, like, I used to be the youngest one in my peer group. Like, I was in effects and stuff. I was always the young one.
Right.
And now I'm like the old one. Like, now I'm older than everybody else. It's really weird. It completely flipped on me.
Kind of how I feel anymore.
I'm the elder statesman. Yeah, trust me, it gets worse.
Right.
Okay, so anyway, just about like your background. I don't know anything about you other than I just know your artwork, which is really, the best way to know an artist is really their artwork. But people are curious, and I'm curious about your art life. How did you get here?
So I come from a family, it's like half artisans, half musicians. My grandfather was like a full-time musician. My grandmother was a painter. My mom is an artist. She was my art teacher for like a large portion of my childhood. My dad's a bassist, full-time musician.
No way, so that's so cool.
Yeah, so it's like 50, and like I do play music myself, but obviously my passion drove me more towards the visual arts.
I had the same situation. I was in a band for 10 years, and I like I was trying to kind of make it, and I couldn't quite make it. After 10 years, I'm like, I got to drop this and move on to something else. And then I got to visual art. It was like, oh, this is kind of what I probably should have been doing in the first place. I'm better at visual art than I am at music.
Right. I can definitely relate. And so my brother's like, but they're all talented. My brother's like very, very talented at bass. My dad's but it like goes in one of two ways. You can do your personal kind of stuff, or you have to, it's the same with the art. It's kind of hand in hand, where it's like you have to make that decision at some point in your life. Like, do I do the kind of gig band? Do I do like my
Right.
dad would do like weddings, parties? So like you have to kind of shift.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure he still, when he was younger, he would do stuff more, creative, more like his individual, written songs. But like you got to pay the rent, you got
Right.
to kind of do the game. So
Yep.
it's kind of like 50-50. So
Yep.
from as young as and I'm sure it's because my mom's an artist and an art teacher that she was like kind of slowly dropping the crumbs for me. But as far back as I can remember, I've always just wanted to do art. Like she was always taking me to the art museum. The PMA has like a great collection of Van Goghs and Dalis, and it was just always an instant, connection to like that's me. I want to do that, So, and then like having my grandma be a painter. So like all of my childhood birthdays were always oil paint sets, acrylic sets, and it's just
That's so cool.
flooded with the materials.
So you were supported as opposed to
sure.
many artists I've had on here that were like, don't do it. don't get into this, be a lawyer, be a doctor.
Uh-huh.
So that's great.
It was and like it's funny throughout my life, my mom has always been like, I'm sorry that I like kind of, I was like, no, like, what are you talking about?
I'm sorry I pushed you into this career.
Yeah, right. Well, because it's a struggle. It for sure is a struggle. But for me, like we were just saying, it's a worthwhile struggle.
Yeah,
I'd rather be doing this and bust, because like, so I did my job for the last decade was doing carpentry. So I was literally physically killing myself breathing, rat pee and asbestos, insulation.
Yeah.
I'd rather do this and not actually kill myself, mentally kill myself. So I love it. It's like you were saying, it's like, it's a struggle, but it's a healthy struggle. Because at the end of the day, like it's doing something fulfilling,
Right. And it's contributing to your future too. That's what I like about the art life. It's like, especially when I'm doing my own specific work, I feel like this is for my future. Whereas when I was doing the makeup effects stuff, I just felt like this isn't really for my future. This is for someone else's project. I'm not really going to get much out of it other than getting hired for another job or something. You know what I mean? And that's not enough anymore. That's how I felt.
Yeah. It's interesting. Like I can relate to that exact sentiment. I would always try to like trick myself. I was like, I'm contributing to somebody's life. This is a place that they're living and it's benefit. And
I'm being of service.
Right. But at the end of the day, I'm like, I'm fixing the houses of like the wealthy and I'm dying. My shoulders are breaking. My knees are breaking.
There is something to be said about offering a service for people that's useful for sure. So it's just like, I don't know. It's almost like I don't want to say some people aren't suited to it, but if you're satisfied doing that and that's your thing, then good. That's good. That's great. Because we need people to do things like that, like all jobs, but if you have that thing inside of you that wants to express your own vision, that's, you can't help having that.
Right.
You know what I mean? Right. Or not having that. Some people don't have that and you can't help it.
Right. You can't turn that off.
Yeah. Yeah. So you need to follow that thing if you have it,
It's one of my, so like now with the printmaking, one of my colleagues is like my professor, and we like just hooked up after college, and now we're working together all the time. He kind of hooked me up with my like day job where we do, I guess it's like freelance printing for other artists, but it's just interesting that it's like the same, we always joke about this idea that like, no matter what I'm gonna make, like it's kind of a bonus that I can make money off of it, for sure. But like when I'm not making, I feel bad. I feel time like there's like that voice in my eyes, like, what are you doing? What are you time's clicking on and you're not making? Keep on making, buddy. What are you doing? So it's like I can't turn it off.
Yeah.
It's not gonna stop.
Yeah. And it's kind of like a good addiction, I feel, because it really like, when you do a good piece, it totally gets you high. And then when you fail, it gets you low. If you don't satisfy that thing, it's like, it's such a frustrating, bad feeling.
I know. It's funny you were mentioning, so that with the printmaking, when I was at Tyler, I would do, your typical, the silk screen. They have lithography.
What's Tyler?
I'm sorry. Yeah, a Tyler School of Art is like it was like a kind of like niche school. Now it's part of Temple's main campus, but it was this like little in the middle of nowhere. It's like attached to a nunnery. It's like very green space, small class sizes, very hands-on with the
Wow.
teachers. So it got like half and half. It was halfway through Temple's main campus kind of absorbed us. And it's a new thing now. It's got like state-of-the-art facilities.
That's cool.
But now it's like more of like your typical kind of art school now. It's like bigger class sizes. Like I was definitely in it for the fact that it was like so tight knit. You could really get a lot of one-on-one with the teachers, and I had like really good relationships with some of those teachers. Now they kind of left, and now it's like the new generation just kind of taking over. But it was a really good school. Both, like I said, it was just kind of two different worlds, you know. And with the new campus, so like at the old Tyler, it was like our silkscreen room was literally like 3 tables. You had to like it was a mandatory class that you had to take, but you know, every printmaker has to find their way into this room with 3 tables. And I think with the class, I was like 6 people or 8 people or something. So it was like really tiny, very slapstick. Like our exposure room was like just like a sink in the corner. And then to clean the screens, you would just put a newsprint down and then pour the like emulsion remover onto the table, and it would make a mess. It was totally probably not OSHA regulated. And then to the parallel, moving to the main campus, now it's like this state-of-the-art stainless steel booth, and you know, it's great. It's like really great. So Tyler, I would do the silk screening, stone lithography, and they have like a great resource. And like as like you were saying, printmaking is so process oriented, and like you need so much stuff to execute any of these processes. And for just no reason, I didn't do any of the woodcuts. So like I did all of them. I did, you know, silkscreen, lithography, etching, did all these different processes. And then after I graduated, like this one professor, he does these like awesome, his name's Alexis Nutini, does these like super ornate, at least he was, and I think he's kind of getting back into it, hand-done woodcuts, but they're like pixelations. So it's like a 30 by 40 piece of wood. He'll put a grid of like, I want to say they're probably like 1/4-inch squares, and then like just do a pixelated landscape, figural kind of thing.
Oh, that's interesting.
They're really like in depth. So that was our first kind of interaction after school. Is we did a collaboration. I did like a figural hand done carving like I usually do, and then he did his pixelation. It was just like this cool learning a new process, kind of restarting this new relationship, and just kind of set me into that woodcut world. And then I like for at least nearly 10 years now, just like that was all I was cranking out was these monochromatic woodcuts, but then the reduction. I don't know if you know a lot about the printmaking process at all.
A little bit, not a ton.
I can geek out about it forever.
I'm into it. I'm so into
right on.
I'm so into tech, process stuff.
It's a very heavy process. So the printmaking, the reduction is relief print is essentially a very complicated stamp. You know, you carve away the whites. What you ink up is you know, whatever color, but typically if it's monochromatic, it'll be blacks. And you'll start lightest to dark. So you have your matrix, your wood cut originally that it's all wood. You start your carving, you put the paper on the block, you put it through the press, and you start with like your lightest. So then you'll carve some more, and then it's registration system that gets your paper to lock back down in the exact same position.
Okay.
And then you put it through again, do some more carving, and then you just keep repeating this process of getting darker and darker and darker, and that gives you your full range tonal, you know.
Okay, so they're one-off prints then.
Yes, exactly.
Unless you do a bunch of prints the first pass, and then a bunch of prints the second pass.
But that's all you get.
Right. Okay, that's cool. That's really cool.
Yeah, so it's like the truest form of limited edition. Like you said, like you could do 20, you could do 50, but once you're done, you're done.
Yeah, you know? Because every pass you're destroying the first one, the previous one. That's really interesting. So how did you get into printing? Because you know, you're a really good painter. Yeah, also, so it's like,
thank you. I appreciate that.
What another thing is you painting on black. I want to talk about too, because that's something I've been thinking about a lot lately. But anyway, that's we'll save that for
getting ahead of our.
How did you get into, why did you choose printing over painting, since you do both really well? So
So at Tyler, it was interesting. There was I was taking some painting classes, and there was only one teacher that was left there that would teach the traditional styles. And then I think the other teachers were kind of moving more towards abstract expressionism and different. And it just we didn't really click. And I think the true reason, though, is the finality of it. The printmaking really kind of stoked something up in me. Is I don't ever have to give away anything. I'm making an edition of 20. I can keep the best ones, and then I can sell all the rest of them. And I don't ever have to have that, the letting go, of the permanence of an oil paint, something you spend hours, sometimes months on, and then having to sell that. There is it's like a little baby, you gotta let go of that. So I think that really was the most kind of intriguing part of the printmaking process. It was I don't even have to deal with that psychological aspect, And I'm a very analytical, mechanical person. I like taking care of my car myself if I can. So I think that part of it too is very hands-on, and it's slow. I think that's also I very much relate. Nothing is fast in printmaking, whether it's the wood carving yourself or even with the etchings. It's sometimes an hour in the bath, and then you got to take it out, do more drawing, and it's everything is pumping the brakes constantly, Yeah,
it's it's the opposite of the world we live in. It functions total full opposite of the way reality is now for us.
How about it?
The modern world, So that's kind of cool. That is another added dimension of what makes it cool in a way. Oil, sure. I mean, oil painting, I feel, is the same way too. It's it's slow, at least. I mean, relatively slow and archaic in this reality, in this modern world. It's kind of there's, why? Right. It's it doesn't necessarily have to exist. It's not digital, but interesting. So were you? Well, how did you must have been painting too, because how do you?
Not really, man. So I did painting in college. It was purely for classes. I always loved painting, but it was always not a struggle, but it wasn't really necessarily my strong suit. I loved it. I just loved the process of it. But again, I just kind of went full force into the printmaking. And then also the like you were saying about not once you graduate, obviously I don't have that studio, I don't have the presses, so I was doing woodcuts and I was printing with a spoon. I was doing these large scale woodcuts of figures, and then I'd print 10 of them and maybe get one good one.
Oh my god,
print with the spoon for 45 minutes, and then the last 15 seconds it shifts and it's ruined.
Oh my god. So instead of running it through a press, you take the back of a spoon and you rub it all over. Wow.
And you figure it's concave, so that little pinpoint, you're literally, it's doing a rubbing. You're getting
wow,
a millimeter's little circle of pressure, and you got to do that through the whole damn thing. It's
it's crazy.
Thank God I don't have to do that anymore. I have access to presses.
So do you have your own press now, or do you have?
I do. I ended up scoring one on eBay. Some other college student who bought one, and then I have one. That's for my kind of nest egg. Luckily my professor that I now work with, we have a gorgeous Conrad press. It's this gigantic drum, just great piece of machinery. And I have mine in my basement. That's just for a rainy day. If ever I need a press, I've got one ready to go.
The thing about those presses, I always think of as you could completely crush your fingers, just flat.
Through the drum, it's actually surprising. Crushing it through the drum, I feel is probably your least worry, but there's so many moving parts. There's gear driven ones. There's I forget the name for it, but there's a track system where underneath the press bed will have a track and then a gear, so the press bed and the drum will move simultaneously. So that kind of stuff, you'll be holding the press bed, cranking it through, and then all of a sudden you're
yeah. I guess there could be a number of things that it's
that kind of goofy stuff is the more
right. Yeah, they're just so industrial and dangerous. But I dig the I do love, you know, I do G-clay prints, standard, what
Right.
most artists do. And I have a
Right.
printer, and on it's similar to, I understand the love of a piece of equipment,
Yeah.
like that, because I feel that way about this digital printer, and I know it's completely a
Yeah.
different deal,
That's
but
hey, it's a tool.
yeah, and it's like changing the inks and setting the paper, and it's just when it works really well, and I love the process of it. I really do. I do enjoy the process of printing. It's just satisfying for some reason, just seeing something, setting it up and getting it right and being able to do it is really enjoyable to me. But yeah, that's like a whole other level. It's funny that we just kind of you got in touch with me, and we just kind of, you're on the podcast because I think, well, it was a week or two ago, I was watching something about the Melvins. It was like a documentary on YouTube, and it showed Mackie, who, his wife, who does their graphic design.
Great. Yeah.
And she did my book, or both of my books.
Cool.
She designed both of my books. So
I did not know that.
She's amazing. Yeah. And, but she had a press, and I was thinking, man, it's so cool that she's got a press, and they're like, I didn't realize they were making all of these limited releases.
So I think some of the like LPs they'll do. It's on, I forget the name of that specific type of press. It's the one that, like, when you roll it, it actually like inks the slab up for you. It's really cool process.
Yeah, and I just was it was like a prelude to this interview in a way, because it was just randomly, and I was thinking, man, it would be so cool if I was going to do something like that. I like doing stuff myself rather than like sending it out to get done. It's like I definitely
relate.
I just love that. So I was just thinking, man, it'd be so cool. Of course, I'm not going to do it. That's like, I've got,
I know, you're right.
Too much.
Just add another idea in the giant pile.
I've got a 3D printer.
Ooh,
that's still in the box. I had to buy it because it was some crazy sale they're having, and it was $200.
Oh my God!
Yeah, it was like it's like $1,000 printer, and they were offering it for on sale for like $500, and then there was an additional percentage off, and it was like somewhere in the 200 range. And this friend of mine who does 3D prints, he's like, you have to get this if you're interested. And so I've never 3D printed, or anything, but I have it. It's been sitting in a box for 6 months because I just don't have time to get to it. So it's like I had to plan, like, okay, probably around the holidays, I usually take a couple of weeks off. It's the only time all year I give myself time off. I might set that up, but
sink some teeth into some 3D YouTube tutorials.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, but I love having, doing things yourself and not having to farm stuff out, and so I'm totally, and I'm so into process oriented and stuff. So I think it's really cool that you're doing that, and it, like I said, it's such a niche.
Oh, for sure.
Thing,
it's niche, but it's surprising that, like, it's slowly making a comeback.
Oh yeah, I agree.
When I was in college, I graduated in 2010, 11, and they were saying, they're like, I don't know, guys.
Yeah, then it was really niche, but you see people are into these printers now, like showing them off online, that people collect them. People that don't even print collect them because they're cool.
Right. And I think it's that, like, when I was describing it to you, it's like the impermanence, the fact that it's like kind of close to a painting. So, like, we work, the guy I share my studio with, we work for this place called Brandywine Workshop and Archives, and what they do is they'll get artists from all over the world. And I wasn't even aware of this. So we worked with Sam Gilliam. I don't know if you know, he was like a kind of relative to a Pollock. He would do like these drip paintings. And he was like world renowned. I had no idea. I'm just like working with my friend. He's bringing me on this project. I'm just kind of doing the grunt work, working the press, doing huge color fields and all this. And then he passed away recently, unfortunately. And then all of a sudden I see like New York Times and Huffington Post talking about the life and work of Sam. And I'm like, oh, wow. I had no idea. So it's just like this cool, and that's, I guess, getting back to what we're talking about. It's like this kind of world is reinvigorating, and that was like 4 days ago, they did a retrospective, and they finally showed off these prints. It was in New York City, and it was just so cool seeing like hundreds of people so fired up, and like the kind of similar to the conversation we're having, where they're like, they all thought they were oil paintings, and we're like, no, they're woodcuts, and they're like, huh?
Mm-hmm.
One, I don't even understand what you're saying. Two, like, what do you mean? Because when you look at them, they look like a drip kind of Pollock painting. That's
Interesting.
Like part of the woodcut process. Like silk screen, I'm sure it's like a very matte, flat. It's kind of like an industrial process.
Right, right.
Posters and everything is made this way. Woodcut, it's like every layer you put down, it's like it becomes topographical. You get like that little extra bit of oil-based. I always say it's like juicy. Whenever I pull a nice print, that's always our thing. I was like, man, that was a juicy one. You literally hear it's like,
right. I get it.
Heel sound,
Yeah.
It's like such a cool tactile, and like obviously selfishly, and also just I love the fact that it is kind of getting some more steam again. It's like like you said, it's super niche. Not many people really know about it, and it's cool to see people getting fired up about these old world process. And,
I see.
Like,
in the last, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
It's just like such an old thing, hundreds of years ago.
And it's that's there's a lot of it's important. Okay. Art, it's got like some kind of God, I can't say that. I can't say the words right. It's like my brain knows what it wants to say, but I can't spit the words out.
I can relate.
I do this
too much of that
all the time. What we'll get, it has a certain kind of meaningfulness because of how the printing press changed the world. It was like this huge development. You know what I mean? And that's an added thing.
I do like that.
That's an added thing that makes it cool. That's my way of saying what I'm trying to say.
And just like a connection back to this part of I really kind of like what you're getting at there. Like it is this connection back to this part that is so integral.
Yeah.
Like what, like you were even saying with your printer, and the fact that you love the process of it, you love printing it and maintaining it. It's still the same thing.
Right.
It's just a mechanical version of the same thing. It's reproductions, multiples.
Right.
And it's just the thing I'm doing is just like this bashing my head into all archaic.
It's closer to the original thing. That's kind of what's cool about it. But that adds like another layer of just, I don't know, meaning or depth to creating art using this way of printing. I think it's really cool. It hadn't occurred to me before, but I've noticed in the last few years, just like I said, people sharing pictures of their print. What do you call them? They just
that's just a press, but there is a
press. Okay,
press is another. They do have specific. If you want to get real niche, they do have their own. That's what I was trying to.
It's a print
of the name.
But generally, a printing press is what they call it. Okay, yeah. All right, that makes So, but
essentially, at the end of it, all of them it's all pressure based. It's about putting ink on the surface, or even intaglio is the etching process. That's the ink is in the groove, and you wipe the surface.
Right.
So two sides of the similar coin. Relief printing, it's on the top. Etching, it's in the grooves.
Right. Right.
You're always crushing it through this machine. And then the paper pulls the ink off. You get an impression.
Okay, this is totally kind of, well, no, it's not. It's in line with what we're talking about. But I'm curious. Okay, when you're doing etchings, and it's the ink is coming from the recess and not the surface, right?
Yes.
So you have to do everything in reverse, or are you doing everything in reverse for yours? For woodcuts.
So there's ways of getting around it for both. With the etching, you do have to do it completely in reverse. Like you'll take your copper, zinc, but it's typically copper plate, and you cover it with what's called hard ground, and it's basically just like a tar, very thin, it's tar mixed into a solvent. So it's like this very thin layer, but then it's black. So your drawing will then show the copper and it becomes a white, shiny copper line, which then gets put into the acid bath to become a black line. So there's really no way around that one.
Right.
It's completely reverse. And this gets back to what you were talking about way earlier, where you'll work on something forever and it's a total loss. That happened so much for me with the etching process. You put it in the bath and you hold your breath.
I get
you hope that you cleaned your plate right and the hard ground didn't flake off.
That's what I like about the wood carving aspect. Is like you're kind of more in control of it. That's what never interested me about etchings or silk screening. Even it's like you have to do these weird things like with lights and burning things, screens and acids, and it just seems like those are things that you kind of can't control. I like things that you are directly in control of. Although I suppose if you're a master at it, the acid will work for you every time. But still, I like that hands-on. It's gonna make it or break it by my direct contact with this thing is gonna make it happen or not.
Right, and first, there's definitely more control. But the way I draw, I just do like stippling, which is like it's kind of getting back to what we were saying earlier. I don't really know what I'm doing with any of it. I do what I'm comfortable with.
Right.
So like your typical woodcut, like the Albrecht Dürers, and it's like cross hatching. You do your drawing and cross hatching, and then you have to like very fastidiously carve.
I can't even imagine that. Yeah, that's insane.
I'm never doing that because that's when it's the opposite of what we're saying. Is you can work on a thing for a month and then you make one false move.
Yeah.
And you're done.
Yeah.
It's just like a huge gouge through your whole drawing. So the way I do it is I'll just take any type of point, a needle, pinpoint, dry point needle for etching. I've used thumbtacks when I forgot my tool and I'm at the studio, and I'll just, meticulously make little dots in the wood, and that'll slowly reveal away the whites.
Wow.
Of the image.
So you're not, you're using
carving,
Yeah, but you're using like some kind of Dremel tool at some point, right?
No, it's just literally just tapping away with a needle. That's
really?
It. Yeah.
That's insane.
Slow
what about
burn.
What about the big areas though? Big areas that you don't want.
It's just tapping away.
You're not using chisels or anything, or
so like if you're talking about so a lot of my other work, it's kind of like vignettes. That stuff, it's like the whites for sure. Yeah, that's
okay.
Hand chiseling, getting rid of.
But you didn't use any like electrical Dremel tools or anything for.
Now I do the guy I share the studio with, Alexis. He has a CNC machine, so I'll make my design. I have the silhouette of where my image area will be. We can just put it in the CNC machine. It does the grunt work for me. But
cool.
Before, it was all by hand. I put in my blood, sweat, and tears.
Yeah, right.
And now I've upgraded to the CNC. I have no.
That must be. That's the thing. It's like it's like projecting images to do a painting. It's like I've done it by eye, and I can do it. I've done a bunch of them just by eye. It's just harder. Right. It's more difficult, so I'm just going to project it because I know I can do it the other way if I had to. I just don't have the time to do it that way.
Right, and it's like back to again what you were saying with the printmaking. It's variables. Like yes, you can master the etching bath, you can master applying the hard ground, you can master all these things, but it's always like sometimes you'll go through a process, you'll make a print, and the last stage, it's a mess. You just spent 3 months and there's nothing you can do.
Wow.
The block isn't working. And now you got to go through the Rolodex. Like, was it the wood that I chose?
Oh my God.
Viscosity?
And that's after doing a bunch of prints. So your last phase after, oh my God, that's insane.
And it's just not working. It looks like a muddled mess.
Oh my God.
Some of the times it's just stuff that I'm seeing, but some of the times it's just a mess. And I'm like, I guess this one's a loss,
Wow, yeah, I get it. Yeah, so even if it's something that just you're seeing, still that bugs the hell out of you,
Yeah, and that's what got me back into the painting is like, I was like super. I was always 90% happy, 85% happy at the end of the print, and like that's a part of printmaking. They call it like happy accidents, where no matter what you do, it's not going to be what you envisioned
Right.
initially. Like the cool thing about the reduction is like, and I'm sure you even kind of will know this, like with doing different styles of painting, that like when you layer a color on top of a color, like I want it to become a skin tone. Well, I started with a yellow, then I did like a more kind of fleshy skin tone. Well, then once I put the color that I mixed brown on top of it, the yellows, it's transparent. So like it's influencing the next level, and there's like
Right.
nothing I can do about it. You know,
Right.
I just have to accept what it's becoming. Sometimes my skulls will turn into like green instead of, you
Right.
know, cream
Right.
colored. I'm like, all right, I guess it's a green skull now. You know,
Yeah, yeah, that can be a good thing though. So,
for sure.
but that, see, that to me, that's like that's one of the principles of art making, I believe,
Mhm.
is that at least I feel like, from my experience, a willingness to follow the art where it
Mhm.
takes you. And
For
that's
sure.
really what the difference, I think, sometimes between a good artist and a great artist. The great artist can can read what the painting wants to be and not
Yes.
and not fight it.
Hmm.
You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Like the skull wanted to be green. So you have to
You got to
accept that.
roll with it,
And yeah,
right?
and you have to be like, okay, maybe, because I could see a situation where it'd be like, no, it has to be
Right.
the way I envisioned it.
Uh-huh.
But the print, I'm thinking in esoteric terms, kind of, but it's like
Hmm.
the print is telling you it wants to be a green skull, so you have to
Yeah,
accept that. And then,
and I did.
oftentimes, what I found when it comes to paintings is like, oh, this it ended up being better than
For sh-
than what I would have come up with on my own, and that's where the kind of
100%.
spiritual, magical aspect of art making comes into play, where this thing happens that you're kind of like, oh wow, I could have never thought of that.
Exactly.
Where did it come from? It's
And it
like,
kind of puts like an extra, like you said, like I for sure learned something in that print, and it put an extra little kind of thing in the Rolodex where it's like that
right,
it did not turn out how I wanted,
right,
but it was like it looked kind of cool. And exactly, I never would have chose these color choices by the end of it.
right.
But it's just like a new kind of extra muscle that I can use for an additional kind of print, you know?
Yeah,
But for
yeah,
sure, it's like especially with printmaking, I found you're at the mercy
yeah.
of the print, you know? I'm putting in a little bit of information, but the print is like, no, no, no.
Yeah,
I'm calling the
yeah.
shots.
Remember your place here.
Yes, yes, for sure.
That I really believe that as an artist, your job is to manifest this idea. Where the
Hmm.
idea comes from, who knows?
Hmm.
You could say it's who knows. So,
Yeah. Yep.
but your job is to. That's why you have to be good. That's why you can't half-ass things. You have to make sure that your
Yeah.
skills are good, because you owe it to the art.
Hmm.
If you're gonna half-ass it because you're
Right.
lazy and you don't want to build your skills up,
Right.
then
Then why?
how can you expect the art to want you to make it
Hmm.
in a weird
Or have
way?
that connection, and
Yeah.
people have, they see that. I think that that's what made me want to become an artist in the first place. Is you see a piece of artwork that's like, for me, like the Dali's and these like super hyper realistic artists, and I'm just like in awe, like going
Mm-hmm.
like, how the hell did you do this?
Right.
I'm
Yeah.
trying to break it apart in my mind and figure like what was painted first. How did you use
Mm-hmm.
layering? So like for sure, you have to commit. You gotta
I
get in that fist fight with it. you know.
And then you have to accept that it's the boss. And I think that
Yes.
that's like, the best way to be when creating a piece of art is that I'm here to serve you.
Hmm.
It's like a spirit. I'm telling you, it's like
For
I view it
sure.
like this spiritual thing. I've said this a
Hmm.
million
Hmm.
times in the podcast, so people are probably sick of it. But it's like, the artwork uh, is like the god kind of, and you're like, how can I serve the god? How can I serve
Yes.
you?
Yes. For
Yes,
sure.
I'm
Like devoting yourself to.
yeah, yeah, to whatever you want. To
Hmm.
whatever you want, I'm going to do my best. And that means it's almost like a religious devotee. It's like you have to get, because super or spiritual devotees, they're like, they pray, they meditate, they're trying to cleanse themselves spiritually. They're
Right.
trying to be as pure as possible so that they
Hmm.
can serve God as best as they can. And that's and it's like that with oh shit. Can you hold on one second? It's my tax
Oh
guy.
yeah. Oh
Sorry,
yeah.
I'll edit this out. One second.
Yeah. No problem.
Man, I was on a roll too. I was like just getting into the good shit.
Yeah. Right.
So I'm gonna have to figure out how to edit that, man. I was waiting all morning for my tax guy to
Yeah.
call me back with a question, because I got to pay the federal now. So it's like,
Uh-huh.
that's the one that's killing me. Okay, what was the last thing I was saying?
Talking about, I guess, like the spirituality,
Right.
devoting ourselves to, and it's actually like funny what you were saying with that is like I've always held a very similar kind of outlook, and I just never like kind of articulated in the same. Like I've always believed in this idea of like, because it's funny, like even with this tool thing, all these people are reaching out to me, and like you'll get, how the hell did you do it? And I just say like exactly what I said. You just throw it out there. You got to make first and foremost. You got to keep making.
Right.
But the idea that like you have to know your strengths, one,
Mm-hmm.
and then just do what once you know your strength, push yourself to that limit,
Right.
and just do the best of what. I actually had this one. It was Chris from the other podcast. He was saying, he's like, I'm not an. I always hear people say that. I'm not an artist, and I'm like, well, stop right there.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, if you have the drive, you're
Right.
already 70% of the way there.
Right.
He's like, I do photography and I want to do silkscreen. I said, dude, you're 95% of the way there now.
Right.
Get your best photographs, edit them, make them into silkscreen, blah, blah, blah. But like always push yourself to that limit and go like full steam into what your strengths are.
Right.
And the whole idea of like you have to devote yourself to it, and like you have to make yourself uncomfortable, know?
Well,
like,
yeah. No, I totally agree. I remember what I was saying before I jumped off was it's like the spiritual devotee will do everything they can. They'll devote their life to purifying themselves for God, whatever
Right.
God it is that they're worshiping. And as artists, our if you parallel the two ideas, our spiritual purification is like being as good as we can at what we do so that we can fully help realize the vision of God or offer the God a painting.
Right,
offer the art God this painting. It's like every painting is kind of like an offering to this thing, and you don't want to offer some half-assed thing. If you really believe in this thing, you don't want to offer some like half-assed thing. So like you said, it's like playing to your strengths. That's just good practical advice, and then finding your weaknesses and working on those as well.
Yes.
So that so you're trying to just always be better, because if you really believe in this thing that is a higher thing, which I really do, I do believe, I believe that it's like something's a spiritual thing that you have to bring your whole self. And this is like not to get anything. It's like to honor this thing fully, which is the goal. Like with a God, it's if you're really spiritual and you're really some kind of devotee to some religion or whatever spiritual belief system, you want to, give it 100%. I forgot what I was saying, but for the artwork, it's like you're honoring this deity in a way, this art spirit or whatever you want to call it. And this is just a way of looking at it. I'm sure like a non-spiritual person can look at it in a different way, but it still would track. You know what I mean?
Well, it's funny. So like, I'm definitely, like I said, I'm very analytical, but there is that, like I was raised Catholic. So there is that little bit of something in the back of my head where I'm always like, so like talking to what you were saying, I have no clue where my ideas come from. And for me, like the idea is a struggle. So like, especially, and I think it's worth, especially with the printmaking, I know that it's going to be a 3-month process. So I've always had this like, well, I can't have it be trash. I have it to be something worthwhile.
Right.
So, like, an idea will come just completely out of nowhere. And it's sometimes like something as trivial as like, I'll be, in Center City and I'll just like see an advertisement that'll give me a cool visual. And then like, I'll make this terrible scribble on my
Right.
phone, and then run home and start to try and make a sketch. So like I do absolutely subscribe to the idea where it is a spiritual experience. Like I cannot tell you where the hell it comes from.
And then when you get it, you know it. You're like, oh,
Yes.
you know, this is it.
That
this
light
is the thing.
bulb.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes,
It really,
yes.
yeah. It's such a trip.
And I love it when it's I love the comedian Mitch Hedberg, and he had this one joke about, sometimes you'll think of a really good joke, but your pen and your paper isn't next to your bed, so then I have to convince myself that it really wasn't that funny. And that'll have the best ideas always come to me. It's like 3:30 in the morning.
I know.
I'm just about to fall asleep, and I'm like, shit. I got to get out the phone.
Yeah, I know. It's like
scribble this down.
I'll do.
And sometimes,
you'll
see, and you're like, what is this?
I do the same thing, but with because I try and keep track of my dreams, just like a dream journal.
Yeah.
And I'll record it, and it'll be and I go check it the next day, and it's like I can't even understand anything.
What the hell?
I had a really good one the other night though. A dream. I had this dream. I saw this giant spaceship. It was so vivid. It seemed so real. It was so trippy.
Right.
But the other part of it was this concept that there's these robots. They're like these machines, and then they weren't they're not related to the spaceship, I don't think. But it was like these machines that just look like, they don't look even like cool robots. They just look like weird machines. They go and grab a person from behind. They grab them by the arms, and you can't see what's happening to them because they're like behind. They go from behind them, grab them by the arms, and then this thing goes on their head. You just see something go down, and then it pulls it off, and then you see what the person looks like after, and it is a person with this part of their head cut off, and they just start running, and they explode in 10 seconds. So it creates these. It's a machine that creates these kind of bombs.
Right, I was just going to say a little ticking time bomb.
Yeah, and it just runs. They run as soon as you let them go. They become these automatons. It was so freaky. Anyway,
what a vivid dream to have.
It was so weird. I was like, man, I got to remember that for dystopia or whatever. But so nobody steal that. It's because it's on record here. It's on record. I'll sue your ass. But when I was like, oh, I'm gonna forget this. I'm going to forget this cool idea. And then luckily my wife woke up. And so I was like, if I tell her, then then I'll remember the dream. So I told her about it just so I would remember. And I remembered.
She's the fail-safe.
Yes. But yeah. So anyway, just to wrap up the spiritual angle, it's like I think you can relate true spirituality. And I'm not talking like organized religion. I'm talking about a true spiritual life to this art life, as
for sure.
The parallels are all there. Like the easel to me is the altar.
Yeah, I got
you worship, and your press. The press is the altar, and the painting is an offering to the thing. And so you have to be your best artistic self, which is similar to being like your most pure spiritual self, in order to do something worthy to this art god thing. You know, and if you're not bringing it 100%, the art god knows, and you know.
It knows.
It knows.
Yeah, right.
You know
for sure. You half-ass at the end. There's always oh, I kind of cheated on the end of that one, but
so
it's funny that it does kind of seem that it does pan it knows, man.
Yeah, totally.
Nothing's gonna happen with that piece,
Yeah, right. And when you do nail it, they sell right away too. It's weird.
Yes.
It's a trip. It's a trip. Not always, but a lot of times they will just be like the first thing to sell in a show or whatever for me, or they're really popular,
Right. So it's so funny that the piece that ended up becoming this tool. So I did this series, and I do the first pencil drawing, do a second pencil, and then I do one that's half acrylics, half pencil. Then I finally take the jump into oils, getting back into the oil painting, because I just always love, again, with the way I work, I do the wet on wet. So I don't have the ability to know the color that I want. I have to mix on canvas and just muddle it around until it works. So I get back into it. I kind of have this shtick, and they're all still the same as my prints where it's like a silhouette in a space. I just like I put my head through a wall trying to make full areas, full rounded spaces. And the one that ended up becoming the poster was, this location. So it was the first time I make a full space and I have to now touch every single part of the canvas. And that was such a struggle for me. And by the end of it, I almost didn't want to post it. I was like, it was such a fight to the end.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, and then like I put so much time into it that I'm like getting to the end. I'm like, dude, I don't know about this. I don't know how I feel, but like I gotta finish it. This is now months that I've devoted to this damn thing. And then what do you know? That's the one that like immediately 4 hours later, Adam reached out and goes, "Hey, I will read." So it's like, I don't know what the hell my own taste is even, But it's just so funny that like it really is the stuff you have to go full in, you have to commit.
Yeah.
And sometimes you might not even be aware of what the right thing is. Like
Mm-hmm.
doing the printmaking work for other artists. That's another thing we always joke about is like, especially when it's non-representational, we'll do like the 1-for-1 edition where like they have a piece of work. We match the colors, we match the shapes, everything 1-for-1. But then we use those blocks and we'll change the colors and we'll play. And then we can either do varied editions or they might choose one of those for an edition, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But we'll have the ones that we're like, oh, we nailed it. That is gorgeous.
Right.
And the artist comes in and is like, that's trash.
Right.
I hate it. And then they choose one that you're like, oh,
yeah.
all right. So it's like, I've definitely slowly learned to accept, it's like, art really 100% is such a subjective, and it's a personal thing too.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, what I'm thinking, 99% of the people aren't going like, they have no idea what I was thinking or what went into this. So it's like this, it's a personal interaction with them on the other end of it too.
Mm-hmm.
So like, it is such, I wholeheartedly agree that it is this spiritual experience, regardless of whether you're spiritual or not.
Right.
It is this extra little magical something.
And every artist I know thinks that to some degree,
Mm-hmm.
But even if you're not like, even if you're like full on atheist,
right,
materialist,
mm-hmm.
you can still make the parallel to the spiritual journey, and you can
Mm-hmm.
and you can see how it relates, whether you believe in that or not. You could say, oh, that's just a way you're looking at it. It's like, yeah, maybe, but it's still it to me. It's like, to me that makes what that means to me is that because I'm into weird stuff and spirituality and stuff. So
yeah.
I do believe that people can gain, I don't know, enlightenment's kind of a loaded term,
Mm-hmm.
but you can gain spiritual advancement by having some kind of devotional practice, meditation
Mm-hmm.
practice, and devoting yourself to it.
For sure.
And so because the parallels are there with the art life, and because of the feeling, the satisfaction and stuff we get out of it and the way it affects us when we create it, I think it's like a legitimate spiritual path that you could be like, you could follow instead of, if you feel more suited. It's like a spiritual path in a way.
Right.
And I think that's kind of what Alex Gray is getting at with that art church, with the chapter with Cosm, It's like, that's basically kind of
like the full embodiment of that idea.
Yeah. Which is so it's kind of interesting. It's almost like it's like a new religion in a weird way, or it could be a new religion.
Right.
Or at least a new spiritual path.
Right.
But anyway, it's getting. I want to find out about your black painting on black.
Right on.
Let's get out of this woo shit. Okay, so what's I appreciate your technique. I've seen your time lapses. It's like an illustration kind of technique to where you're projecting, tracing, or tracing, transferring a drawing.
Exactly.
I do that, with these over here. These are like movie stills. It's
right. Exactly.
I just did
some your reference.
Yeah, it's like I transfer them. I do the drawing, and normally I don't paint like that, the way you paint. Like normally I kind of
Yeah, you block in,
block
I see.
things, and I
Yes,
kind of
yes.
slowly refine. But when it comes to these, and this is only probably since I did this painting skull flower, which is a skull with a big yellow flower.
Yeah, that was one of my favorites you've done. That
Oh,
was very
thanks.
very good.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, that was one of those ones where I was like, I nailed it. Everybody
Hmm,
loved it. It
hmm.
was one of those magical ones.
How
But
about it?
but the way I did it was the photo. I took the photo because it was a random thing that I stuck, that my wife gave me flour. I stuck it in the
Hmm.
skull because I didn't have anywhere to put it, and I was like, oh, that'd
Hmm.
make a cool painting.
Huh.
And so it
How
was like
about it?
totally inspired. So I took the
Huh.
photo. Okay, I'm going to paint this later. And then I ended up doing it like 6 months or a year later when I needed to do a painting for this show for Capro,
Right, right.
a group show. So I just needed one good painting. And I'd been kind of holding on to that idea. And so anyway,
Hmm.
I projected it, and then I just painted it direct.
Right.
I didn't
Huh.
do, I don't think
No
I did any,
underpainting or
did it in ink. I traced it with India ink, and then I
huh.
didn't tone the canvas. It was just on white, and I didn't do glazing much. I maybe
Hmm,
at the end I may have, but not much. It was like pretty much direct painting, just the way you paint,
hmm,
where
hmm.
you're painting certain areas at a time.
Right,
And
right.
it was like, wow, this is so. I really enjoyed it because I'm so more of a, like you said, a filling things, rough shapes,
Hmm,
you
hmm.
know. But I really enjoyed painting that way because it was very like, I don't want to say paint by numbers, but it was like,
Yeah, for sure.
it was more like controlled, and uh enjoyable because it's like I
Hmm.
had the reference
So
right next to
yes.
the easel, and I was like, oh, I'm just gonna match the color and paint it, and it was super
Uh-huh.
fun, and it was also
Uh-huh.
really efficient, and I was
Hmm.
happy with the way it came out, so I was like totally into it. So I've been painting more like that
Hmm.
since then,
Okay.
just to switch things up, because I've been painting
Right.
more the other way for forever, for like 20 years or 15 years or
Right.
whatever, 18 years.
Hmm,
Maybe it's
hmm.
20 at this point. I don't know. But so it's good to change things up and
For
try different
sure.
techniques. So anyway, my point is,
Hmm, hmm.
that's the way you paint, from what I've
Yes.
seen.
So it's like for me, it's like I'm definitely relating to what you're saying. Like it's like a marathon for me, and like it's again, it's out of pure necessity that like I would love to. So like I went to it's called the Creative and Performing Arts High School before college,
Oh,
where it's essentially like pre-college. They give you four.
this was your
Uh,
high school?
this is my high school, yeah.
That
So like
sounds so
you get
cool.
four art class. Yeah, it was everything. You know, they do dance, drama,
So lucky.
writing.
I always was
uh,
jealous of kids that got to go to these arts
For
high
sure. Like
schools,
I said, it
man.
was pretty much college before college. It was the
Right.
same exact format. Four art classes, I guess what is that? Five academic class, whatever. They split up your
5 boring classes.
yeah, five classes that we nobody cares about. So they taught us the I guess it's like the not Baroque style, but like layering. So you do your like monochromatic and then you use glazes. And like I did it. I did it for the class, but like it must just be the way my brain works, man.
Oh,
Once,
the glazing, the like
yes, like color glazing.
what's the term? Grisaille, where you paint
Yes,
it
so
all finished black and
exactly.
white, and then you glaze. Okay,
Yes.
yeah.
So I liked it in theory, but the just by the time I'm done, the black and white, I'm done.
Yeah.
Yeah, my brain, I'm checked out, and now it's essentially like the way I would always think of it is like, you mean I got to paint it again? I just
Well,
painted the whole thing, and I
yeah.
got to paint it again.
Okay. This is interesting because oftentimes when I'm teaching students how to paint, I do point them to the Grisaille method because
Hmm.
um, uh, you don't have to think about color and value at the same time. That's what's cool about it, is that you could just
Okay.
focus on the values. It's almost like drawing in that way, and then you think
Right.
about color later. But it's
Huh.
but it is like painting it twice, kind of. So
Right. Right.
I totally get that. I do like the control of I like
Right.
being able,
Understanding the
yeah,
light.
yeah, and thinking just about the values and the lights and the shadows and the light, and then coming in with the color later.
Hmm.
I do kind of like that, but uh, some people, if you're able to think in terms of color and value, which
Hmm.
I think most artists do. I mean, not a lot of people do grisaille technique. I mean,
Yeah, right.
it's not
It's
super
very labor
common.
intense.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. So, but that's a like you are naturally good at that. Apparently, value and color, like you seeing it as one thing and not having a problem with it.
I think that like it's just like the chronology of how I did it, going from woodcut, this printmaking, like so again, everything's so final in
Mm-hmm.
printmaking that it was like trial by fire. You know, there's no turning back.
Right.
Your decisions are final, and
Mm-hmm.
also like the way that the color relations, as I was saying earlier, the way the layering works. So like whether I kind of knew it or not, I was always learning color relations
Mm-hmm.
and like definitely like you're saying where it's I try to flesh out my whole idea in my references and my drawing. I get it as close as I can, and then it's like probably 5% changes happen on the canvas where
Right.
like maybe I didn't have a good enough reference and I just got to make it up or whatever, like, but it is very nice, just like you were saying, having the one
Yeah.
for one.
Yeah.
There's like
Yeah.
the documentary Tim's Vermeer. I don't know if you
Yeah.
ever
Yeah.
watched
Mm-hmm.
that.
Yeah.
So after watching that, obviously I was like so enthralled. I love Vermeer's work.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen a couple of shows where they have like, you know, they bring his collection here and there. And I actually did like a very cheap version of it with the like the early rendition of the painting where it's just like the 45-degree mirror. I made a reference of just a photograph of a stack of skulls, and then I just did that
Hmm.
process. And I think that was like probably the first stage in this technique, or like I'm just my methodology, you know,
Right.
just doing the one for one.
Right.
And it's like I'm just training my eye to match tone, match color, you know,
Mm-hmm.
value
Mm-hmm.
as best as I can, essentially, you
Right.
know.
Yeah.
But I
But
do like the beginning to end, and I'm done.
yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Who else is I know a lot of people who paint like that. What's her name? She was on the podcast. She did one of the first video podcasts when we started doing the video podcast. Linnea Strid. Linnea Strid,
I gotta
right?
look her up.
Yeah, she paints like that though. She just will like
Okay.
paint a finished area, all
Mm-hmm.
just not all over. It's like she's just painting it
Yeah.
and just kind
Section
of
by section.
yeah, it's pretty cool. Um uh
I think it also helps me to keep my colors relative too. Is like that was the other struggle that I found, like in especially in like high school and then onward, is like the oils. My own methodologies are slow, so like you know I would do the monochromatic, whether it was in like a brown or a black, just straight black and white, and then I would go to do the color glazing. I would like do this. It's just slow going. So like I'd do
right.
like the top 5 inches, and then I got to come back, and I'm like, well, shit. Like I kind of remember which colors I was using, but and then you get
Yeah, yeah.
another section done, and then once you go to glaze it, you see like these little quadrants of different hues, and you're like, oh, I didn't quite nail that
Yeah,
one.
right.
So I think it just helps me to keep it consistent. It's just like
Mhm.
I'm working, even if I don't match the colors, it's like kind of blending from where I left
Right, right,
off,
right,
and it
right.
just stays more consistent. It's just purely out of necessity,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
just the only way I know how.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's all good. Okay, why the black panels?
So again, that was probably purely through just kind of trial and error. So like I did those drawings. I
Mm-hmm.
then did the first one, that was the oil painting, and I knew that it was going to be this figure in like space.
Mm-hmm.
So I just wanted to gesso it with matte black gesso to begin with, and in doing that, I just learned like for whatever reason it just. So I guess this comes back to like my pencil drawings. I always do them too light. That is my
Mm-hmm.
biggest crutch that I need to work on. I always stop before I get my blacks black enough,
Yeah,
and it looks terrible.
I feel you.
So when I do the blacks first, it forces my hand. Like I'll have to do multiple layers.
Mm.
If I want the whites to be whiter, I got to keep building up layers and building up the highlights. So like it's again, it's probably a crutch, like I started out with the blacks, but it also just does something to the color. Having a little bit of the underpainting coming through, being black for whatever reason, just helps the way I render the tone.
Mm-hmm.
Like I guess what you're saying with just purely using color to make the tonality, I can use the black as my like shadows to my advantage. And
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
it's just the way that again, it was like just kind of like everything I do is very analytical, and there's like just another step, and I was like, ooh, I actually do kind of, this is a benefit. You know, I did the first ones are, you know, obviously a pencil drawing on a white piece of paper, and again, it's like, oh shit, like if the backgrounds are black, now I got to sit there and get graphite dust, and you know, it was just like an extra step I didn't feel like dealing with.
Right.
You know,
no, go ahead.
Just started black, and then you know, that's now just become part of the process.
I mean, I guess I've always done burnt umber in that way, you know, where it's toned, and then I'll go in and paint the shadows when I'm painting that way. But there is something about painting on black that I just feel like I don't think I've ever done it. And I was just looking at panels, another weird thing the other day, like 2 days ago, because I got to order some canvases for some projects. And I was seeing all these pre-painted black ones, gessoed. And I was like, it's something in the back of my mind is like, interesting. So I'm going to do it just to try it, you know?
Right.
I don't know why though. It's just like feel. I just want to try it just as an experiment. It
definitely is a different, like I said, that's the way I learned was doing, she would have us, my old teacher, Miss Coonan, she'd have us dip our brush into our waste, you know, our turpentine or turpenoid, and just get the gunk at the bottom. And that's what we would gesso our canvases with. So like, we learned by just, you know, having a gray mesh, purpley mesh, you know, to start with.
That's a cool way of laying it under a ground.
And that was always how I did it. It was always that kind of mid-tone. You know, exactly what you just said. You start with the middle, you do your darks, then you do your lights, and like kind of go back and forth. And just, I think it's just like more efficient for whatever reason. For like I said, I can like kind of play with the black showing through here and there. It forces me to make them black. Those shadows are going to be there whether I like it or not. So
that's
like
cool.
A nice little thing to lean back on. You know?
Yeah, I'm definitely going to try it.
Yeah, it's definitely worth a shot. Actually, I'd like to know where, because like I get the what the hell are they called? Like ceramic board. It's like MDF coated with a coating of
I know what you're talking about.
Some kind of ceramic.
It's not gesso board.
Clay board.
Yeah.
But my problem, like I'm just going. I want smooth. You know.
Do you sand it though? Because the problem, the problem with the clay board that I've had is, I remember when I started painting, I bought a bunch of clay board because I was like, I want smooth, and I didn't know to sand it. It was just a nightmare working on it. It was all slippery and just didn't have anything.
I didn't know that
either. So you got to sand it. You got to sand it just to give it a little something.
Get the tooth.
Yeah.
Yes. And I've learned that like I'll gesso, sand, and then that'll get, but it still isn't perfect. Like I'm still finding myself, you know, doing it's of course in the most like detailed part, and there's like that little bit of brush, you know, topographical map going on. And I'm like, oh, Jesus Christ, you know? The one spot I missed.
So you don't do canvases then? You're a smooth surface guy.
Yeah, the first one I did was on a canvas, and it was just that first Tim's Vermeer style one was on gessoed canvas, and it just like the texture. Yes. I was like pretty much just going to gesso it. The next one, my idea was I'll just cake it in gesso, sand it, cake it, and get a blanket of smooth gesso. But I was like, you know, I might as well try out these panels. You know, I was also considering maybe wood lately. Doing the same thing, you know, sealing the wood, coating it.
Right.
But the I will say those clay boards are pretty good. Like the other thing I kind of like about them is like if you want to pull out like, you know, like a highlight in an eye or something, you can just like take a X-Acto and pop it and you get back to the clay board exposed. So it's like an extra move you can kind of use.
That's kind of cool. That's kind of cool.
I've seen that was actually on their website. They suggest like for people that use it for drawing that, you know, if your eraser isn't working well, just straight take an X-Acto blade and
that's good to know. Yeah. I always wondered what the difference. I mean, what is the purpose of clay board over the gesso board? Because it's the same company that sells them both. But the clay board is also for like scratch board too. You can paint ink over and scratch it off, right?
Yeah, and I think it's also like water. You can do watercolor on it because it is like an absorbent material. I think that's their like. It's pretty much supposed to be for anything. You can do ink drawing, pencil drawing, oil painting. It's supposed to be like a broad surface for painting, whatever, really.
Have you tried aluminum, the ACM panel yet?
I have not, and I've been there's another artist I follow. What's her name? Dina Brodsky, I think, and
Oh
she
yeah,
paints on copper, and I'm like,
I know
oh
copper. So yeah, I
man,
know. I want to try copper too.
yeah,
But the aluminum, I just prepare the like with gesso, and it's just like a
hmm.
panel that it's the street stuff that like stop signs are made out of and street signs.
Okay,
So they're
hmm.
like two aluminum sandwiched. It's got some core, like plasticky kind of core in between them, so it's kind of lightweight.
Okay,
Because I like that, because the thing I don't like about wood panels is sometimes if I drop them, I'll chip the
yes,
corners, and
yes,
that's a hassle. But so the aluminum, it's like sometimes it'll bend if you drop it, and then you can kind of take pliers and bend
yeah,
it
right,
back. So it's a little
right.
bit, and it seems
Yeah, that is
a
the
little.
other thing I'm scared with the clay board is they will fracture.
Yeah, right,
If you
right,
drop a corner, it will pop a whole corner of the lam or whatever the coating
right,
off.
right,
So,
right.
so,
Yeah, yeah. And the aluminum, you don't have to worry about. Oh, that's the other thing I like about it. You don't have to worry about warping. You don't have to
mm,
worry about anything you have to worry about with wood, where you have to
yes,
seal it all up.
yes.
If you don't seal, the moisture, if it's in weird climates or whatever.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
the thing I love about it is that you can, sometimes I'm in such a rush to get paintings to dry, I'll put them in
Hmm.
front of a heater.
Yeah, I'm doing it right now.
So the wood, if you're not careful, it gets too hot, the wood can warp.
Ooh, oh my God.
So
Right, right.
but the thing is, I could push it further with the Aluma
With the
comp.
oh, and I'm sure
And
that might even help, like absorbing the heat and
yeah,
kind
it
of
doesn't,
drying it from both sides.
yeah, it doesn't warp for sure.
Huh.
The only thing I've got a convection oven that I use for
Huh.
melting my clay, and I've put
Hmm.
5x7s in the oven,
Huh.
and that dries them like great.
How
But
about it?
but I will say, one of them I dried too much, or I had
Oh
the heat
no.
too high, because I was like seeing how far I could push it, and the core started, like the inner
Right,
core
that plastic.
started kind of sucking in. So then you've got these little ledges of thin aluminum that you could bend.
Hmm.
You know what I
Hmm.
mean? Almost like sucks in.
Right.
So anyway, but you can heat them more than you can wood and not get any kind
Okay.
of damage, man. My last solo show, I would have this little bathroom, had a space heater in there, stuck those things in there. So,
Dude, I can relate.
so are you painting with a medium? You must be painting with some kind of medium or are you just painting straight oils or?
Straight oils, and I do
Oh
like
no.
sometimes. So the other, I've mentioned this before. Like I basically like I'm finally getting through my stash from college and high school and my grandparents.
Mm-hmm.
So like I paint with anything. It's probably garbage paint 9 times
Yeah,
out of
that's what
10.
my dad was. My dad used to paint with whatever. I would look at his
Right.
paints, and it was like, they're all these
What the
cheap
hell?
student grade paints, and
Like
he's like,
gambling and
yeah, he's like, I mean, Gamblin's got. I use Gamblin stuff, but
okay.
they've got like a cheap student
Yeah,
version,
right, right, right.
But
Intro.
yeah, Winsor Newton has
Yeah.
the Winton, which are
Hmm.
cheap. But it's like, I know a lot of artists that use mixed. They use it also. My dad didn't give a shit, so.
And you can tell there's like with the certain colors, you will see the transparent when like trying to think of my last painting, there was like certain parts of it where I was like, oh my God, this is going to take like 4 passes. So,
Yeah, it's not.
so thin.
It's not as pigmented. They save money on the
Right.
pigments.
Oh, for sure. Right. It's like extra linseed oil or
Yeah,
whatever their
yeah,
base is.
yeah.
I just have at it with the
Just
paint.
okay. You haven't messed with mediums?
No, I should. This is the second time that somebody has suggested, like, you probably
Yeah, I mean,
should try messing with some mediums.
it's funny because I discovered Liquin when I first started painting, which is a drying medium. And
Okay.
so if you paint, it will be dry the next day
Okay.
without heating it. It's just it dries the next day. It's great.
Good to know.
Yeah, it's synthetic though, so if you're a traditionalist,
Right, the
it's
archival,
Yeah,
right.
it's like they say it's archival. People have been using it for, I don't know, 40 years now, and
Okay.
it's good. But
No
people
news.
that are like traditionalists,
purists?
yeah, purists
Right.
are going to be like linseed oil, no dryers. But when I was first starting, I had to finish stuff. I was working in the day,
Yeah.
and so Liquid is perfect. And I still use liquid, but lately I've been painting with no medium or just a tiny bit of liquid if I need it, just to thin the paint a little bit. But I love painting with no medium. But it's got me. It's took all this time to get me to stop painting with medium. But I love it. Like this, I painted this without medium for a commission.
Right on.
And it was lead white. I don't know if you ever used lead white.
Yep.
Lead white is crazy. It's so cool.
It's like the supple,
It's like mixes with other colors. It's like so different than titanium. Titanium is very like great and opaque, but if you mix lead white with colors, it's not it doesn't tint very strong. It's a weak white, so it blends in. It's lead, so it's toxic, but so are cadmium colors. But I love it though. So I'm been into using lead white. It dries fast too. Lead white dries fast.
Okay.
And since you usually are mixing white in with your paints generally, and you use lead white, it kind of works like a dryer for your other paints, and it makes the paint. Right.
It's like sapping the moisture.
It's just helping the other colors dry. So it almost works like a drying medium when you use lead white. Yeah, it's cool.
Okay. I have an old can from once somebody gave it to me. That's like, and that's like my I'm slowly dwindling it down.
I was like, totally on a side note, I was watching this YouTube channel yesterday. I don't remember what it's called. I won't look it up. It's old Masters Academy or something. Every once in a while,
kind of rings a bell.
They do a live stream of their classes where they go over everything. They go over like materials, and it's weird. I don't know why they do it. I think they're trying to get you to pay for the whole course, which is like $500, which looks worth it. The info is really good. They go over all materials, brushes, and then the different old masters techniques and show demonstrations and talk about art history. It's really good. But they had this live stream on. They go for like 20 hours just playing the stuff. Anyway, I don't know why I brought that up, because they were talking about lead white. That's why they were talking a lot about lead white and how it's also the strongest. It's got the strongest paint film out of all the paints. So that's why traditionalists like to use lead white, because it's the strongest paint film. You're usually mixing it with almost every color unless you're glazing or doing really dark colors. So therefore you've got lead white throughout the painting, which is going to give you the strongest paint surface and most stable paint surface. So that's my pitch about lead white.
Thing to know. Yeah. I should be tapping into my reserves more often. Yeah. That's the one thing I'm using, like the intro student colors, but then I still have this like nice tube that somebody gave me. Yeah, it's like probably like a $70 tube it's probably titanium white, but that's like the way I like rationalize it with myself. I was like, at least it's like probably 50% this paint, at least, tinting it. Looks all right.
The art god wants you to use better paints. The art god is speaking through me, telling you.
Yes, I gotta invest.
I've been getting some Vasari paints too for a while. If you ever used Vasari, they're like really good.
Okay.
High quality paints. I'm trying to transition into all the really high end paints. Just because, anyway. Okay. So we were on black boards. Okay. I also wanted to ask you, this is a dumb question, so I apologize, but I need, probably could phrase it in a way it's not as dumb, but ultimately what I want to get to is, where do you get your ideas? It's like the worst question. People always ask me, where do you get your ideas? But really, you've got a theme. There's a theme in there's like a running theme in your work. It seems like, I don't know. It seems like to me, like kind of spiritual and archetypal and cosmic and how do you formulate your paintings, I guess, is a better way of putting it. How do you decide what you wanted to paint? Like I remember when I decided I wanted to paint monsters, how did it develop for you, or did it develop, or?
So like years ago, it was like when I was in college, it definitely was like, again, I was like influenced by like the very traditional artists you always hear. So like I was always struggling with that idea. Again, like it's funny, like you're getting back to like the spiritual side of it. It's like, what am I going to devote my time to? What is going to be, because again, it's like time is fleeting. I'm hyper aware of it. What is going to be the thing that I'm going to devote and really dive into? So it was definitely a kind of a struggle. It was doing those prints was kind of the start of getting kind of a visual idea. And I like the anatomy and I like all that because of the it's not individual, it's like everybody can relate to anatomy. Everybody has the same structures within our body. So like
that's a great point. That's a great point.
Like that's why I definitely liked Alex Gray's work, and I like the visionary artists where it's like it's taking the individualism out of it, and also like the idea that like I can only use myself or my partner's like face so many times.
Right. Yeah, it's like I paint white people only.
right, exactly.
That's what I like about the monster stuff too, is it takes like race away.
Exactly.
I mean?
And that was another part that I was like constantly thinking. It was like
more universal.
Right. Exactly. And it's like it makes it more referential for everybody can enjoy it.
More inclusive, so like I guess I could say.
Exactly, for sure. And that's like that was always kind of a part. Like I do want to keep that in mind. Like this is
for everybody.
Exactly. It's for you as much as, I'm just making it, but it is for the, for everybody else that wants to take the time to look at it,
Right.
So I came up with that kind of general theme, and I was like mentioning it earlier. And again, it's kind of getting back to the spiritual thing. It's like, it really comes from nowhere. And it's like, I'm lucky if I get one or two a month where I'll get that, like that light bulb where I'm like, oh, and that's when I'm a couple of my Instagram posts where it'll be like that terrible, awful sketch next to the final. And that's it. Like, I don't do a lot of preliminary. I get the kind of vision. I make my full rendered as best as I'll take tons of photographs and try to render the idea as best as I can. And then that goes direct to the painting. And then I execute.
Okay. So the ideas because most of my ideas come from doodling and sketching and not knowing what I'm going to do and just screwing around until something develops. Do more of that. No, but I mean, it's one way of working. Whereas I know I know other artists that kind of like think about it, think about an idea or wait for this thing to come to them and see it finalized. And I've had it happen to me, but it's pretty rare for me to see the finished thing. It's kind of like it's cool, but it doesn't happen that often. Usually, part of my process is just like automatic writing, automatic drawing, just see what comes out, see something that you like, and then go, oh, okay, I'm going to follow this a little bit and see if it turns out into something good. But so you're kind of not like that. You're more like think about it, or they come to you just flashes, or how does that work? So
it is. I will just get like a visual idea. It's interesting. Like we pretty much do the same thing, and I think you will maybe do it physically with the sketching and planning out. Like I'll have the initial idea. I know pretty much generally where I want to go with it, but then it's usually in the act of how the hell do I make this? What references am I going to take?
Right. Okay.
And then it'll change, and then it'll, I'll see something that I'm like, ooh, that's just like, because again, at the end of the day, it's got to look cool. It's got to be something interesting, and then something I'm going to want to spend months on. So like sometimes, again, like something completely out of left field, and I'll follow that kind of vein for a little while, and then it'll change it a little bit. But for the most part, I have like I said, it's probably like 80% of the idea, and a lot of it comes from more for me is like I'll just research things to no end. I think a lot of it comes from reading.
Yeah, I love
looking into just researching to know, and like that'll give me cool visuals. I'll latch onto one of those, research the hell out of that, whether it's mythologies, whatever.
Right.
Research that, and then it'll give me another, and then I'll just kind of like follow these veins, slap different things together, and then it's very kind of give and take, back and forth. It's not really like it's probably very similar to you. Like very rarely will I have the whole thing like, oh no, this is what it's got to be. beginning to end. The rest of it is like I'll have that initial kind of idea, whatever, something will kind of spur a visual or even just an idea.
Yeah.
I'll research it. That'll lead me to other things, other ideas.
So you're just kind of following your curiosity, really.
Yes.
And the art develops out of researching what you're curious, things that you're curious about. That makes sense. So you definitely, it's like you can see your style. It's like you definitely have a style, a specific style looks like yours, which is really cool. And one of the hardest things to get, I think, it's something that you can only get for the most part by putting the time in,
right?
Right. And it kind of happens on its own. I know that, I don't know, before I became a painter, I think a lot of artists think or a lot of people who don't know about art making think that it's an intellectual decision, like, what am I going to be what's my thing going to be? And then you decide in your head what your style and what your voice is, and then you do it. And it's not like that. It wasn't like that for me anyway. It's like, you have to get the work out. You have to keep putting work out, and then it will begin to develop, and then
it will reveal itself.
Yeah, it will reveal itself. And then it's like up to you to find the things that are you, the most you, and to go in that direction, because I think when we start, we definitely emulate the people, painters that we were
100%.
Influenced by. Like a lot of my early stuff is very Gigery and Beksinski-ish, and it's like I kept trying to like, okay, what are the things in these paintings that are clearly mine and not like a Beksinski, not like a Giger? I'm going to follow that just in the back of my mind, keep that in the forefront. I'm going to focus on those things to develop the next paintings. So I don't know what my point was, but so you mentioned you were inspired by a lot of these old masters, really. Dali. I was definitely, when I was a little kid, my aunt had all these cool old Dali books. I used to trip out looking at those, and Escher. I was a huge MC Escher fan. Yeah, right. There's
one specific print of his with the snakes, the 3 snakes interlocking. I would suggest, if you've never, there's only like 3 videos of him working, and there's one video of him printing that print, and it absolutely, like, I'm figuring his registration system, it has to be methodical. No, and also it's a tessellation. I didn't realize. So that print, he only printed a triangle, and the triangle locks into itself 3 times.
Oh, wow.
So he only prints like I don't know if you remember that it's got like this interwoven kind of mesh that the snakes are weaving in and out of.
I gotta see it. I gotta look it up. Dude, I gotta look it up. I'm sure I've seen it.
Mind-boggling.
all of his shit is totally all of his stuff is amazing. Amazing. And he's like,
that to me is like the pinnacle.
Okay, so what would I call?
Let me see if you just search like Escher snakes. But let me.
Okay, I'm gonna look it up. I can't wait. Okay. Oh yeah. That's
so that geometric pattern.
It's insane.
Is every quadrant of those snakes, and you can find the jog line eventually when you see the block he made. So that's a triangle, and that thing locks into itself 3 times. Yes,
that's crazy.
It may, as a printmaker, when I saw him print, and like, so the way he prints this damn thing. Real slap happy, just like puts the ink all over it, and then he puts the paper on the front, and then he like takes it by hand and flops it like this, puts it through the press, and like just like totally nonchalant, and like boggles my mind. It's how he managed to do this.
It's funny because Escher is like totally mainstream at this point. Like he's got all the books, but I still feel like, at least in the art community, the art scene that I show in, it's like MC Escher doesn't get a lot of love, but I mean, even it's like his stuff is so amazing. I mean, he's done. He's not overrated. Put it that way. He deserves, for sure. He deserves the acclaim. The hands. I mean, he's done those iconic the hands drawing each other, and the globe, and
and some of his
the skull and the eye. It's
yes, right, exactly. Like these super like household images at this point, for sure.
Yeah, but they're masterpieces for sure.
So he also got me into, it's called mezzotints. I don't know if you that process.
I've heard it, but what is a mezzotint?
So you take a piece of copper, instead of using the acid, so instead of doing the drawing with the hard ground and all that, this is a total physical, so it's kind of getting back to the woodcut, total physical process. You take the piece of copper, and it's called a mezzotint rocker, and it's, if you look at it on a microscopic level, it's got little serrated edge, and you take the rocker and you roll it on the piece of copper, and it takes hours
what does the rocker thing look like?
Do I have one? It's basically like a flat piece of metal, and it has like a rounded, convex edge on it, and then that edge has a bunch of little serrated.
So it looks like a bent steak knife, but like micro.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. Okay. It's kind of like, you ever seen like the cheese cutters? It's like a big flat piece of steel, but the cutting edges around it looks exactly like that, except the edge is like serrated.
And so you're going like this.
You're taking a lot of your force, your pressure, and what it's doing is it's making little dots, and they describe it as like little volcanoes. So the center that's puncturing the copper will be a dot that holds ink, but then it also creates like a little belly.
Oh, weird.
So microscopically, you're putting millions and millions and millions of these little dots. It creates this gorgeous velvety surface on the copper. And now that's the process where you are now drawing one for one, where you take a burnisher, metal burnisher, and you smooth out those burrs. That will be your whites of the drawing. And he's done a couple, and I've done a few, but that was one where like it literally will take you like a week to rock a plate that's 4 by 4.
Wow.
And then you do your drawing, and you don't know how it's going to ink up and how it's going to get an impression. So you're really at the will of the printmaking gods at this point.
Yeah.
And again, back to him being his mezzotints are just hard to fathom. So they're pretty big,
So you do, and they look like drawings, right?
Yes.
That's exactly the weird thing.
It's the closest thing to like a 1-for-1 drawing style in printmaking.
Because I used to look at his stuff and be like, this looks like a graphite drawing to me, but it says it's a mezzotint, and I'm like, I just did not get it. It's
very labor intensive process, and again, back to like the multiples, it's great,
Yeah. Can you adjust after you do a test print? Could you do more to it?
For sure, yeah. Like there is a back and forth. I only have one rocker, and I that's one thing on my butt. I want to get back into. I tried to get back into it. For whatever reason, at that time when I was at Tyler, the presses just worked beautifully on my first run. I had no idea what the hell I was doing. And ever since, I keep trying to do them, and I just having no success. And it's like that thing you were saying where like I'll put like a good month in, and then you can't get an impression. And I'm like, what am I doing?
Right. Wow.
I'm wasting time. I'm not, so like, you can go, it's like a give and take. You can keep burnishing more to get the whites brighter. And then they have like little tiny mezzotint rockers. Say if you drew too much, you can go back in there and, really finesse the black back into the image again. So you can kind of pull it back. And some people will draw just with the mezzotint rocker on like a regular etching to get like really velvety black areas. It's such very, like, we're already talking about niche. This is like really down the the rabbit hole in terms of process, but it's such a cool thing. Whenever I see one in an art museum, immediately my brain's like, oh, holy shit.
Yeah, it's amazing. Now I'm looking now, and I'm like, wow, okay.
I'm gonna try to find one of his real good ones.
Yeah,
there's like 2 or 3 specific ones. There's one of like this bird sculpture that he had that's just like so hard to wrap your head around. And I think some of the real famous, so the eyeball, the eyeball with the
skull in
it, that is a mezzotint.
Wow. Okay.
There's the leaf that has like a droplet of water on it. That one has always blown my freaking mind. That's a mezzotint. So they really are just like this extra,
it's crazy echelon,
crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, for printmaking world, he's totally like your.
He's the god. He's the high
Yes.
priest.
Yes, he is.
He's the pope.
Oh, he
He's
is
the
the
pope of
Pope,
the
man.
printing world.
Yes, he's the embodiment of whatever that spirit,
Yeah, right.
And I think he's like kind of similar to, from my understanding, he's like a Van Gogh in the way like he just like picked up draw. That's like the part that really pisses me off. He just picked it up at like 35 or 40.
Really?
You know what? I think I'll just do some. Yeah, like all of his work. If you look at the age range, it's like a 10-year window, 15-year window, and it's later in life. And oh, what do you know? I'm just like amazing at doing tessellations and these super mathematical.
Yeah.
What the hell?
Yeah. Every once in a while, you'll come across someone like that. It's pretty rare, but
unbelievable.
Yeah, amazing. Wow. Yeah. Anyway, Escher was one of the. It was like Dali, Escher, Francis Bacon. Hieronymus Bosch. Hieronymus Bosch is another one.
Yes,
there are all these artists in these books that my aunt had. And those I had the first impression, or first artist that left an impression, and then I got into like Frazetta and Giger.
Of course, right.
All these painters, and then Beksinski later, and so yeah. So anyway, I guess here's my point: was you talk about these artists. What were the contemporary artists that you inspired you, like in college and stuff like that?
I mean, definitely, like I said, the visionary artists, were definitely like a huge influence. It was funny, like when I was in, I want to say it was like high school to college, I believe is right around the time when you'd made that leap. It was like 2000 and
early 2000s,
2000, like mid 2000s. So your work, ironically, strangely enough, was also kind of a part of that. Like, ooh, like this is a thing you can do, kind of like cool. Watching you go from the, special effects world to more of like fine art world. So like, there's like like I said, for sure, Alex Gray, like with the anatomy was definitely like a huge influence. But I think like those Grays, so like when I was in college, we did a study abroad. Me and my wife went to Rome, and just purely randomly, it was the 250th anniversary of Caravaggio.
Oh,
and
wow.
They had the largest collection of Caravaggio's works. It had been sold out for something like 2.5 years, but they said, if you show up and you're still in line, by the end of the day, we'll let you in.
Wow.
So we show up at like 5 o'clock in the morning. And of course, it's on a road that is perfectly in line with the sun. So we're just literally baking ourselves.
Suffering for that art.
It took easily 8-10 hours. We waited. We're like one of the last people.
You stood in line for 8 to 10 hours? Oh my God.
So ironically, this is so random, but I'll still tell the story. I had one of the professors, I believe it was actually the head of the printmaking department at Tyler. He, again, was just randomly there as well. He was taking a bike ride. So we're waiting. We're cooking ourselves. We're probably 5 hours in. We're all sunburnt and dry. And he drives by and he recognizes. And he goes like, what the hell are you doing? And we tell him it's the Caravaggio thing. And he's like, oh, man. He's like, oh, whatever. So he goes on a bike ride. We go see the exhibit. It was all the best of the best. They had the Medusa. They had the Michelangelo. All of the hits, man. It was so good. And they're so much bigger than you would ever think. It was just such a cool experience. The way they lit them was like in the vibe of Caravaggio. It was like dark everywhere. And just
cool.
So anyway, we had this great experience. And that was totally like, I'm always trying to chase that dragon of capturing that light quality he has now. For sure.
Yeah.
But so we get back to the campus and I see the teacher and he's mangled. His face is all bloodied and he's all mad. And he goes, you know what? Back to what we've been saying. He's like, as I'm riding my bike, I'm sitting there thinking to myself, these students, these, 20-year-olds are out arting me. I'm the professor. I'm the head of the department, and I'm going on a bike ride. And meanwhile, they're standing in line for Caravaggio, and he's like, I fell down like off a cliff like 10 minutes after I saw you guys. And that was the art gods be like, besmirching me for not paying my dues to Caravaggio. That's
hilarious. That's great.
It was so good. Seeing his work in person and seeing all of those pieces. So it was like when we went to Rome initially, it's funny actually, the painting I did for the Tool thing, that was a place in Rome called it's the alchemical portal, and it's just like this random piazza that really nobody goes to. So like when I went, instead of going, like we did do the, the Colosseum, the hits.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
I was constantly researching. I was only there for a month, and I was like, what are the weirdest places?
Mm-hmm.
So we found all of the goofy Caravaggios that are in some random church and a random piazza. Like you really had to kind of do the work to find them. So we had already been seeing them all, and then all of a sudden this Caravaggio show just kind of falls in our lap.
Wow.
So it was just like such a cool experience. And again, that has really kind of, they're clearly not contemporary. It's like 200 years old, but that has for sure been like a constant push in my work to try and get some of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
His work is just, wow.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. Amazing. That's so cool. What's up with that portal? Because I read a little bit on Instagram. I think you talked about it on an Instagram post. So I'm kind of curious about the whole painting really, and how and is it like, is there a specific meaning for sure, or is it intuitive, or you know what I mean?
A little bit of both. So
a little of both.
The place itself is, I forget, it's hundreds of years. It might even be over 1,000 years old. It's like a ruin essentially.
Mm-hmm.
So the painting itself is real. Like those two figures, the doorway, and the setting essentially is real.
Right.
I tried to make it as if it was like a more fantastical, like this is thousands of years ago before Rome's ever been developed, So there is multiple kind of myths of people in the area that have written different books. And like I chose one specific one, was about somebody had seen a alchemist, going into this wooded area. They didn't see anything happen, but they see like a kind of like a glow of light in the distance. And then they run to that portion of the woods, and all that's left is like a little pile of gold and, this doorway. And essentially, like, I like the idea of like, everybody's, just the metaphor of alchemy and this idea of taking, base materials or non-precious materials and making this gold, this precious thing. And it's like, it's what we're all chasing. It's kind of like a metaphor for immortality, or like it's an impossibility.
Everybody's
chasing after,
Right. It's a metaphor for enlightenment, spiritual enlightenment.
Yes.
Also,
Yes, right, for sure. So it's like we're trying to get to this pure preciousness. And I just like the idea that this person did succeed, but it cost him his life. Essentially, he had to sacrifice his life to make gold. The gold's left behind. He can't even use it now. So I kind of like that theme in reading these different kind of allegories and these old myths. And there's like 2 or 3 different ones that people have, just kind of made up these different stories about this place. Cause it's like just slapped in the middle of like a,
so cool,
regular town, or like, it's more of the like, they're like South Rome is more of like, I guess, the locals. So it's like this random piazza, there's businesses and Starbucks and all this random crap. And then there's like this fenced off little corner. And then there's this cool little ruin, It's funny, when I first posted, I actually got a couple people from Rome that were like, how the hell do you know about this?
Wow. That's so cool.
Nobody knows about this.
That's amazing. Yeah, it's perfect for a tool poster too.
Yeah, so like kind of what you would ask me about, like where my ideas come. That's kind of like the perfect embodiment of it.
Okay,
like,
so yeah, you wanted to find weird stuff. You found this cool ass ruin. You saw it, and you're like, probably like, oh, that'd make a cool painting. So you took pictures of it.
Yes, I have tons of reference.
Right. Okay, that's so cool. Yeah. That makes sense.
And it's like a personal connection I had to it from my own just expand. Like that was 10 years ago, It was like I never would have even thought. For sure, I took it with the intention of using it with art someday.
Right. But you didn't have
never would have thought that it's going to be this.
I'm going to put it on a tool. I'm going to do a tool tool poster before Tool was even really doing posters.
Yeah. Right.
That's amazing. Wow. Well, what do you have? I mean, what do you have coming up? Do you have anything happening like coming up? Or are you just still dealing with this tool poster coming out and all these people hitting you?
I'm still riding the wave for sure of that. actually, so it's funny, like having it happen in 2019, and that was even before I did that specific piece. But I was always kind of like, you see the other people, see you when people are doing the remarks and all this. So I always had this like kind of rolling eye, like, what would I do if that ever? So now I've had like this kind of backlog of ideas that I want to kind of flesh it. So for sure, that's probably going to be my next at least couple of months of just playing with. It's just going to be so cool to do additional fleshing out the idea a little bit more, and more like my goal for sure is just to kind of do more of this. I've worked with, there's this one band Source that I posted recently. I did some album artwork for them. I've worked with another guy, Souls, who's going to come out with something, I think at the end of the month. So like, that's definitely like, that's part hand in hand with like, I'm going to make art no matter what from the day I'm born, but I've always having the musician family as well. Like I do love that, like the kind of bind between art and music. And that's definitely something I for sure want to keep doing. I just love like it kind of this whole series spurred that idea where like that band Source, they just said, here's the lyrics, here's a demo, hadn't been released yet, make something.
That's awesome.
Do the same thing you did for Tool, do it for us. And it was like, how blessed can I be? Yes, please.
More, please.
Yeah,
that's awesome. Wow. Well, that's great. Where can people find you? Where can people find you? I'll put it in the body of the text as well, but just
my main go is the Instagram, MIKGM. That's where I post like the most. I have a Facebook as well, and that's just under my name, Mike Gamble, and then Mike Gamble Art. But it's like secondary to the Instagram. That's the one I always just post all my, like I'll make stories of what I'm doing live sometimes, and I'll post, everything I'm more working on, currently definitely goes on the Instagram. Same thing, I have a TikTok as too, but that's like another one that's like more secondary. Same thing, MIKGM.
Okay.
But Instagram's the bread and butter.
Excellent.
Oh, and my web store is Left-Handed Press. So if you search Left-Handed Press, that'll bring you to like everything that I have available.
Excellent. Well, thank you for coming on. Great chat. Really great. Yeah. I'm glad it went to the weird places. I always hope it goes to the weird places. That's my favorite thing to talk about. So yeah, thanks for getting in touch. This is a great interview. So
thank you.
Just fell into my lap. So that's because of you contacting me. Yeah. So don't hang up when I say,
right.
I'm so unprofessional. This is so bad, but
it is all good.
Just say goodbye. You have to just say goodbye to the audience because that's a stupid tradition I started and I can't stop. So just say goodbye. However you want to say goodbye.
See you later.
See ya. Thank you, everybody.